Okay, I thank Nicola and Sylvain for inviting me and for the great opportunity to discuss a research I'm carrying out in this very moment, which concerns the theory of the elements in Pietro Pomponazzi and his unpublished texts. And attending the session of this morning and the next session will be a pleasure because it helps me to prepare a good commentary and to focalize on some issues concerning this big and difficult topic. So the Renaissance debate concerning the nature and the behavior of the elements represents a still unexplored field of inquiry. In the face of the great amount of texts published and unpublished concerning this topic, our knowledge of the debate, which involves Pomponazzi, Achillini, Contarini, Boccadiferro, Marcantonio Genoa, is almost all to be done with very few exceptions. In January 1521, while commenting Aristotle's De Cielo in Bologna, Pietro Pomponazzi provided us with an evidence of the wide discussion about the remanence of the elements. I wrote here the quotation. My lords, this matter, it is whether the elements remain formally or not formally in the mixed body, is a very discussed matter, materia tritissima. And on this topic, not only questions, but even books are written. This evidence permits us to support that around the beginning of the 20s, the doctrine of the elements was on the agenda in the Italian university classes of medicine and natural philosophy. Yet, our knowledge of this matter is almost desolating. Indeed, contemporary scholars have been largely ignoring the texts and thus also the concepts. A good example of this tendency is Bruno Nardi, who devoted great part of his career to inventory all the reportaciones of Pomponazzi's courses. At the same time, when facing one text about the remanence of the elements, he diminished its value by saying that, I quote, "We nowadays lost a real philosophical interest in the question, but at that time it was of great interest for philological reasons, to understand which was Aristotle's thought." Here the quotation ends. Coming to Pomponazzi, an overview of his courses allows us to identify many circumstances in which the master discussed the theory of the elements with his pupils. First, he had two courses on Aristotle's De Cielo, probably in 1519 up to 1521, and one on Degenerazione e Corruzione, 1521-22. These courses represent the starting point for an inquiry on Pomponazzi's position about the elements, as the commentary of those Aristotelian milestones imposed the master to deal with the elementary theory. However, Pomponazzi not only commented Aristotle's and Averroes' test, but he also added some big digressions, we call them examina, on De Cielo, third book, Testum et Commentum 76, Degenerazione e Corruzione, first book, Testum et Commentum 90, and second book, Testum et Commentum 30 and 50. These digressions are particularly important as they allow us to reconstruct his position on the issue and his attempts to solve some difficulties. A further document concerning the remanence of the elements is the Quaestio Singula, contained in Paris, Bibliothèque Nationale de France, Latin 6450, which is attributed to Pomponazzi, but it was copied on January 1526, 7 months after his death, and probably coming from his course on De Cielo. The Quaestio concerns the remanence of the elements, like the test I mentioned above, and we can be sure about the paternity of this Quaestio from Pomponazzi from some internal arguments which are very peculiar of Pomponazzi's style. Finally, some useful remarks and concepts concerning the behavior of the qualities are provided in two further courses, namely the course on Meteora, 1523-24, and the course on the Sensu et Sensato, 24-25. These additional tests permit a compared overview of the arguments, as well as a genetical reconstruction of Pomponazzi's position across 6 years of continuative teaching activity, from 1519 to 1525. Today, I am focalizing on the first kind of text, and particularly on his commentary on De Cielo, third book, Testum et Commentum 76, which was the first circumstance in which the master had to deal with the constitution of the elements and with their remanence within the mixed body. At the beginning of his digression, he states that the remanence of the elements should be better discussed in De Generazione e Corruzione, first book, commento ultimo, as in the Cielo it is presented rapidly and incidentally. However, he says to his pupils that he plans to discuss about it now and to avoid it when commenting De Generazione e Corruzione. But of course, he will be asked to repeat everything again in the Generazione e Corruzione with another long digression on the same topic for the sake of the comprehension, because the matter was very, very difficult. Before we get into the doxography and the argumentation, I would like to spend some words concerning the methodology of the text, which is common both to the commentary on the Cielo and to the commentary on the Generazione e Corruzione. I have two remarks to do in this direction. Firstly, the issue about the remanence of the elements reveal what is Pomponazzi's idea of the duty of the philosopher. Being aware that the issue contains several positions and difficulties, he states to his pupil that sciences work through additions, scientiae sunt per additamenta. This means that what he was expected to do was to gather all the historical positions concerning the remanence of the elements, to test them, and to add new confirmation or objections. Such approach is evident when he considers the structure of the commentary to the Cielo, where we find a list of 4 positions, or opiniones, a list of objections for each opinion, and a list of arguments in favor of the last interpretation, which is Pomponazzi's one. At the same time, such approach per additamenta determines the scarce success of Pomponazzi's series of the elements in his century. Indeed, it was very difficult to follow due to its high degree of technicality, while new and more synthetic styles of discussion concerning natural philosophy were going to be assumed by the natural studies, for example, Contarini's De Elementis. My second remark concerns the epistemological status of the issue. According to Pomponazzi, there are 2 categories of scholars who discuss about the elements. On the one side, there are the friars, the scholastic professors, but he says that they provide no good arguments as they are not really interested in natural philosophy. I quote, "They do not intrude in this matter, and when they intrude, they say almost false things." In addition, when the friars don't know how to solve the problem, they used to resort to God as a theoretical passepartout to explain everything. On the other side, there are the physicians who are closely involved in the problem of the elements due to medical and pharmacological reasons, and they are also more reliable on the base of the very solid and concrete experience. They are, as he says, artefices sensati. However, they seem to privilege a practical consideration of the theory of the elements, and they do not consider in detail all the theoretical issues about qualities and forms. Pomponazzi makes a fool of them, saying that they look more to profit and not to philosophy. The philosopher inquires the reasons and the causes of the phenomena iuxta eorum principia, and thus he provides a more detailed description of this issue. So, let me now introduce you to the core of the issue, which is the remanence of the elements. This question allows us to focalize on a fundamental problem of the Aristotelian theory of the elements, namely the genesis of Hylomorphism. We might consider this problem like the Chinese boxes. We first have to analyze the structure and the relations of the qualities within the element, and then the structure of the relations of the elements within the mixed bodies. And in each of these steps, we have to analyze what behaves like matter and what plays the role of the formal cause. And on the top of that, Aristotle exposed an extension of these Chinese boxes in the Partibus Animalium, saying that the human being consists of the composition of, first, elements with elements, it has the mixed body. Second, mixed bodies and mixed bodies, it has the organs. And third, mixed bodies and organs. So the origin of this inquiry of the primal components of the world starts with Aristotle's Meteora and the Generazione e Corruzione, where the philosopher stated that the 4 elements are not the minimal parts of the universe, but they are composed in turn by primary qualities, it has enlivening dynamic forces, which determine the primary matter, the proteule, through the movement. This first step of inquiry, it has from qualities to elements, is scrutinized by the academic professor while commenting De Generazione e Corruzione, second book, third chapter. The second problem, from the elements to the mixed bodies, it seems to be more complex and provided with a broader apparatus of positions and doubts. For this reason, at least in the case of Pomponazzi, the problem from the elements to the mixed bodies deserves a specific examen in order to try a solution. The problem sounds like this. Once we admit that the elements are the constitutive part of a body, inhering in it as components, we wonder how the elements remain within the body. Do they remain with their entire structure, realiter, that is, with their specific substantial forms, or do they rather undergo a transformation and thus remaining in a different condition? And if so, which is this transformation, and under what conditions do they remain within the mixed body? In order to answer these questions, we can follow Pomponazzi's argumentation. The arguments exposed by Pomponazzi are organized into 4 opinions. The first 3 represent a doxographical section, where he examines the ancient and medieval interpretations, and then he adds also a 4th opinion, a 4th solution, which is his own idea. The first opinion concerning the remanence of the elements within the mixed body is that of Avicenna. According to the Arabic philosopher, the substantial form of the elements must be really and entirely present within the mixed body. This means that in every single part of the mixed body, we can find all together the entire substantial forms of each element, all gathered together in the very same place. Otherwise, we have no real mixture, but just a simple juxtaposition of parts. Avicenna's doctrine was problematic for many reasons, some of which are listed by Pomponazzi. So, other thinkers tried to propose a variation of Avicenna's idea in order to fix what was wrong in Avicenna's description. In this case, this is the case, for example, of Ugo Benzi from Siena, a famous physician who died in 1439. Ugo wanted to save the real remanence of the elements, but he had understood that it was impossible to admit a plurality of substantial forms in the very same place, unless we admit that they penetrate each other. And therefore, Ugo proposed a complex articulation of Avicenna's idea. When we have a mixed body, each element stays by itself, and so the elements are contiguous, and thus the body needs a 5th forma mixti, the form of the mixed body, in order to get unity. In this way, we count on 4 substantial forms of each per element, and a further specific form for the mixed body. The rest of Pomponazzi's Lectio 31, 31 is devoted to criticize both Avicenna's and Ugo's opinion. In Lectio 32, we deal with the second opinion concerning the remanence of the elements, that is, the opinion of Averroes and Philoponus. The Spanish philosopher agreed with Avicenna, saying that the forms of the elements must be really present. However, he disagreed on their intensity. According to Averroes, indeed, the forms of the elements remain, but with their being diminished, secundum esse refractum. Pomponazzi criticized very harshly Averroes' solution, which seems to him, I quote, far more stupid than any other opinion. First of all, Averroes contradicts himself. In the Cielo, 3rd book, Testum et Commentum 10, he says that the elements can get intensified and diminished. But at the same time, in Physic, 5th book, Testum et Commentum 21, and in Metaphysic, 8th book, Testum et Commentum 10, he says that the substance does not admit more and less. Even worse is the variation of Marsilius of Hingen, for whom the qualities are proper passions of the elements, and thus they can get intensified and diminished together with their subjects, while the qualities are accident of the mixed body. Pomponazzi finds this alternative a nonsense, a fatuitas, as the qualities are absolutely not proper passions or proper accidents of the elements at all. Indeed, they are necessary accidents, as it will be established in the 1st chapter of the Sensu et Sensato. I leave here now to consider the extant arguments by Pomponazzi, especially the one concerning a potion called Teriaca, which is a very good example of the difficulties of Averroes' position. And I come to the third opinion. In the Lectio 33, Pomponazzi introduces the pupils to the third opinion, which is the opinio communis, supported by Aquinas, Scotus, Gregory of Rimini, Peter of Abano, and Pietro Torrigiani. It has the so-called plusquam commentator, as he wrote a plusquam commentum. In addition, Galen seems to say that this third opinion was Aristotle's own thought. They all believe that the elements do not remain really in the mixed body, but rather they remains virtualiter, that means according to their virtues. The master analyzes this opinion from a semantic point of view. What do we have to understand with virtualiter, or secundum virtutem? What is that virtue? These philosophers believe that the elements are not really present in the mixed body with all their substantial forms, but they leave their constitutive qualities as accidents of the new mixed body. Therefore, we have a new unitary substantial form, which is the substantial form of the mixed body, together with several qualities which come from the elements, but the elements are no more substantially present within the mixed body. Again, Pomponazzi lists a long number of difficulties concerning this third opinion. I cannot repeat now all these arguments, but I would like to focus just on one, which seems to me to recall the example of the Chinese boxes I exposed just above. If this third opinion is true, then a single element should be considered like a mixed body, as it has somehow qualities and a substantial form, and so it should be considered at the same way of a mixed body. In other words, this criticism by Pomponazzi points out the intrinsic difficulties of the doctrine of the elements from Aristotle's Meteora and the Degenerazione e Corruzione. Where should we stop dividing the bodies? Is the element something primary, or it is already the result of a mixture, of course, the mixture of qualities? With this question in mind, we reach the last and fourth opinion, which is Pomponazzi's one. I have to say that it is not properly a solution, but rather a trial that should bypass the difficulties of the third opinion. However, Pomponazzi suggests that his pupil should follow this fourth interpretation as long as they will not find a better idea. And I quote, "You have to do like those legislators who make people observe their religions as long as they do not find a better religion." The religious metaphor goes on when Pomponazzi realizes that his own, the fourth opinion, disagrees from all the others, and he pretends to be like an heresiarch. I quote, "Even though I might be exchanged for an heresiarch and a founder of many heresies, I want to be an heresiarch in my opinion. In the opinion I will explain. Indeed, I will explain an opinion which agrees with none of the others." This awareness of being a disruptor reflects a wider idea of the methodology and the duty of the philosopher, who is charged of seeking the truth without any compliancy to this or that school. In this respect, the Reportatio Vaticana of the Degenerazione of the Cielo contains a notorious motto by Pomponazzi that was often misinterpreted and that we can now consider in the proper way. The master says that, I quote, "In philosophy, who wants to find the truth must be heretic." Of course, this has nothing to do with religious heresy. He more humbly means that his idea is at odds with the medieval tradition. But what does he propose? He proposes against the tradition. The fourth opinion, opinio heretica, is a mixture, una mixtione, of the previous interpretations. First of all, the elements do not remain really against Avicenna. Second, the elements do not remain with an ontological diminution against Averroes. Third, the elements remain virtually like the third opinion. But even fourth, Pomponazzi shows a different interpretation of the term virtualiter. The opinio communis believed that virtualiter had to do with the remanence of the primary qualities of the elements within the mixed body, for example, heat, coldness, dryness, and moisture. On the contrary, Pomponazzi says that the virtue is not a primary quality, but rather a middle quality, qualitas media. He takes the concept from Scotus and from Walter Burley, and he provides with an example. If we put together hot and cold, they get corrupted and tepidity arises. This tepidity is a middle quality which is both capable of warming and cooling, since it possesses a virtue by both. Summing up, when we have a mixed body, being the four elements gathered all together, the substantial forms get corrupted and a new single form rises, which is the form of the mixed body. This new form contains the virtue of the four elements at the highest intensity. This solution is a compromise. It combines Ugo Benzi's forma misti with Aquinas' remanence of the virtues, and thus there is no need to postulate a further form for the mixed body, but just the corruption and the new combination of the starting elements. Finally, Pomponazzi remarks that one element is normally prevalent above the others, despite being all present together. In the last part of the lesson, the master tries to solve some difficulties of the third opinion by adopting the assumptions of this fourth opinion. Coming to conclusion, I would like to frame Pomponazzi's opinion within the broader Renaissance debate on the elements and more generally on hylomorphism. I considered Pomponazzi's lesson 31 to 34 concerning the Cielo, third book, Testum et Commentum 76, where the master faces a long digression about the principle of nature it as the minimal constituents of the physical world. In lesson 29, he had already dealt with Pythagorean and Platonic solids, providing a description of their structure and the correspondence to Aristotelian elements. The introduction of geometrical relations and terms permitted to avoid the regression of the elements and components, which I called the Chinese boxes, by fixing a geometrical, indivisible starting point. However, from the very last line of that lesson, lesson 29, it emerged that Pomponazzi had very bad confidence with mathematical consideration of the nature. I quote, "I do like Aristotle, who, being an expert of astrology in Metaphysics 12, refers to Eudoxus and the experts. Likewise, I refer you to the mathematicians, since I do not understand mathematics." Left aside the geometrical description of Pythagoras, the master follows Aristotle on the field of the physical description of matter and bodies. However, this is a crackly field, and the division ad infinitum is around the corner. What is matter? How can a synolon become matter for a new synolon? As we have seen, all the scholars who took part to this debate proposed a different approach in order to establish what are the real elementary compounds of body and how these compounds are bound together. Pomponazzi exposes his own interpretation, which is a trier and not void of problems. For instance, it is not clear in what Pomponazzi's forma mixti should differ from Ugo Benzi's one and from Aquinas' one. However, Pomponazzi tries to fix a progression of substantial forms. He tries to find good causes and a proper description of the phenomena. Concluding, Pomponazzi believes that only qualities play the role of matter, while the forms get corrupted or generated every time and again. This is how we pass from the form of the substantial form of the elements to the forma mixti. Thank you very much.